My name is Jason Seidler. My pronouns are he, him. And the one very secret nickname that I've had throughout my ultimate career that very few people know about, but use wisely, is Redshirt. I grew up in Northwest Atlanta, Georgia, a little town called Dunwoody. So I was born and raised in the South. Experienced a lot of outdoor playtime as a young child, street hockey in the streets, dirt bike rides and dirt bike courses, and had a giant garden I had to take care of as a kid. I'd call it a little farm, but I call it maybe a big garden. In my childhood, I played all the sports that were available. I started with, of course, Little League and immediately got into soccer, and also found myself in things like basketball or football or flag football, but immediately gravitated towards soccer. But at the same time, always found myself as a pretty good sprinter. And so I was very interested in things like track as I got older. I found Ultimate at 13 years old at a Jewish summer camp in the Saratoga Santa Cruz Mountains called Camp Swig. We got to play Ultimate a few days a week. Most importantly, there was a traditional game once a week on Friday on the giant camp lawn where all the Ultimate players from the camp would get to play against the CITs and the counselors. So at about 13, I found the sport, and this was in 1987. I always found myself very comfortable with the flying disc, and it just so happened at the same time, I just got into middle school and I found discus as well. And so I started throwing discus in 7th grade. I found Ultimate around 7th grade. And although I loved soccer, every time I got to play Ultimate, there was just this sense of kind of wonder and a little heightened level of joy and fun, but with all of the ultra competitiveness that I loved about soccer. So it was mostly just really finding an opportunity to play something else. The challenges I faced playing high-level Ultimate are unique in my perspective. I feel quite lucky, and this is one of the stories I share most often, which is throughout my career, especially in the earlier part of my career, I'll call it the first half, where I was more playing open club Ultimate against the best players in the world, I found myself in a unique opportunity, which was myself and my teammates were good enough to get to the biggest and most important games in the world. And over the course of that very impactful part of our career, we made it to about 10 championship games. These are college national championships, United States national championships, world championships. And probably the most challenging and impactful part of my experience was of these 10 early championships I found myself in, we won 5 of them, we lost 5. And for me, I quickly understood the very fine line between winning and losing at the highest level. I understood it was much more of a mental aspect of sporting and competition at that point, and really started to challenge myself to dive deep into the understanding of what was the difference between those 5 wins and those 5 losses. I would watch film over and I would take notes and I would study. Mostly I'd study myself and trying to understand how I behaved and how I took those moments. What I found was there's very little difference between winning and losing at that level. The most important thing you can do is accept defeat graciously and accept that failures will tend to provide the absolute biggest opportunities for growth. In 1998, we made it to our first national championship against Boston, Death or Glory, who at the time was preparing to win their 5th consecutive national championship, and we lost. Now, they were the greatest team our sport had ever known, equal to New York at the time. It was a really difficult year to go through, getting to that championship game and losing. We took that as motivation to work harder than any other team in the world for the following year. And through good fortune, found ourselves back in the national championship game 1 year later against the same Boston Death or Glory, looking for their 6th national championship, which would at that point made them the winningest team in Ultimate. And unfortunately, we lost again in the national championship game to what felt like the unbeatable giant. Once again, we take a step back, we look at what we learned, we find out how to get better, we rededicate ourselves. The adversity of losing, the most important thing in your life 2 years in a row, is in some ways unfathomable, and in other ways is probably the greatest gift we ever could have received. And finally, we used all of that energy, time, and education to put everything together, figure out how to work even harder the following year. Finally, in the year 2000, we used all that adversity to figure out how to dethrone Boston and all the other teams. And that was the first year we won our club national championship. I've been a captain of ultimate teams over many years in the 90s. And back in those times, we didn't have traditional ultimate coaches. Us captains were really the de facto ultimate coaches. And that's really where I learned how difficult it is to be a coach or a captain. And I made all my mistakes, had to live through my adversity, and slowly but surely become a better leader. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of missteps, and plenty of things that I wish I never said or ever did. But it was through that opportunity that I had the advantage of becoming a decent young leader. I recognized in the late 90s that a lot of my teammates didn't have those same experiences being thrown into captainship. As an example, as a second year college player at the UCSB Black Tide, someone had the good or bad idea of me becoming one of the captains. And I was completely unprepared and was not ready to do it and made plenty of mistakes. There's lots of things I'd like to do differently, but we had a successful year. I started to understand I was given these gifts that other people didn't have. And so I started to connect some of the advice I got from my parents my whole life, which was them always guiding me to be of service to my community and the people I love. I realized that was one way I could do it, was by becoming a captain, eventually a coach. I really didn't step into those positions until maybe the last 10 or 15 years, where my teams really needed me or other players to coach because there's not enough coaches in ultimate. So until we can train up the next generation, until I can mentor a bunch of new people, until our ultimate organizations can do the same, I'll be doing as much coaching as possible to just fill the gaps until we can get there. At the same time, I had an opportunity to coach a professional team about 7 or 8 years ago, the San Francisco Dogfish. They were an MLU pro team. And that was my first opportunity where I was being paid to be a coach. I had a lot of responsibility. I had 25 grown men counting on me and depending on me. I sort of went back to school. I started reading books. I started trying to understand what other great coaches did. I started following a lot of our young Olympic coaches, and all of that led to me finally getting the confidence that I was at least a good coach and I had a lot to offer, but mostly because I was the result of all of the people that surrounded and mentored me as a younger player. I really felt like I took all the best parts of everyone that mentored me, put it together for my version of trying to be a great coach. A lot of my gifts I felt like were just opportunities. So the gifts I received that gave me an advantage over most people were opportunities. Most of these opportunities in life I could track back to my parents, showing up, signing me up, driving me places, supporting me. As I got to college, it became my peers, my teammates. I had some incredible mentors as I showed up in college that really came and gave me that type of brotherhood, fatherhood, unclehood support. To me, those were a lot of the gifts and advantages that I was receiving. Otherwise, I was a fortunate, young, somewhat privileged person who also understood that life is what you make of it. The harder I worked, the more I was going to get out. So I somehow figured that out at a very young age and really applied that to whatever I was doing in life. Spirit of the game is one of the most unique aspects of ultimate Frisbee that I can speak to in terms of what makes us different as a sport. When I was first introduced to ultimate, spirit of the game was introduced to me as the constitution of ultimate, the agreement we all make to play our hardest, but never, ever at the risk of friendships, relationships, or bonds with your fellow athletes. I was taught that we all love this same sport. We all go out and compete and fight for the same goals. At the end of the day, why would we or should we hate each other to a certain degree in terms of the way a lot of athletes are taught in their journey of becoming a competitor? So for me, spirit of the game came around at sort of a perfect time. I was almost 18 years old. I was an extremely aggressive competitor. I was overconfident. I was brash. I knew I was good. And I knew I worked as hard or harder than anyone in our sport. So I brought that with me onto the field. And sometimes used that confidence in a way that would maybe, we'll say, pushed over the edge of sportsmanship or spirit of the game. And because I was taught what spirit of the game was, but didn't fully understand it enough until I got older, the players I looked up to, the players I respected, would use that in a way to educate me. They would say, spirit is interpreted all different ways by all different athletes, but the way you're behaving doesn't seem to fit into any aspect of spirit of the game. Now, I took that really serious because it was coming from the players and the coaches that I looked up to the most. They were my heroes. They were the players I was building my own game around. So spirit of the game became a way to understand no matter how intense things were, no matter how hard we might play or hit each other, there was never a reason to go over the line and just create relationships that were going to be completely negative. But at the same time, I learned that spirit of the game means something different to many players that play it. Ultimately, I love spirit of the game because it means we're still one of the only sports in the world, if not the only sport in the world, that is self-officiated. And even though we have passive observers that help us in some big games, spirit of the game is what has allowed us to remain one of the most unique sports in the world. There's no question that we have to learn to resolve conflict as athletes in a way that no other athletes have to even deal with. They've got coaches and parents and refs to resolve things, but for teenagers to have to enter into this world of conflict resolution while their emotions are just the absolute extremes is very unique. It's something I was attracted to, and it was something that I understood would allow Ultimate to remain a game for the athletes. In all the other sports I played, because there wasn't something like spirit of the game, I kept finding myself in positions where referees or umpires would actually have more to say in the outcome of a game than the athletes. And that was something that never sat well with me. Once I found Ultimate, I understood this was the sport that really synchronized more with my soul. Players playing their hearts out, they get to decide what happens. They can't agree. Well, let's send it back and just do it again. It was something that just felt so fair and reasonable and different. And so spirit of the game still represents all those things to me. I'm really proud of our sport for holding on to the importance of spirit of the game and making sure it remained, even with these other unique aspects of our sport, like observers that can help us bridge the gap between professional sports that require some version of referee at some level. I would summarize my coaching philosophy differently based on who I'm coaching. I really understand the different levels of ultimate development. And I've had some other great coaching mentors around me the last year that have also further helped me understand the importance of how coaching is different at all these different levels. Where I'm dedicating a lot of my time right now is to youth coaching. I'm truly happiest at that level of coaching. I've played ultimate for so long. I've had so many great teachers and mentors and teams and experiences that I have a tremendous amount to offer to the young generation. I truly understand what it takes as a young teenager, what type of work you want to put in to become a great player as a late teenager, to maintaining your greatness as a young 20-something, late 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, 50-something, where I'm at and still playing and being effective. They all require different approaches and different skill sets. So in particular, as a youth coach, the things I think are most important are disc skills. It's giving people this foundational understanding of what's possible with a flying disc, doing it when your body is still forming and growing, and being able to actually grow into these skills. I feel like all the great athletes in the world will have every opportunity they need to train hard, hit the track, hit the gym, get personal trainers, but you have one opportunity in your life to start to perfect disc skills as a young person. As we all know, younger people, as they're still developing, are processing and learning on levels that we will never, ever get back to as an adult. It's a similar understanding of how we learn languages when we're young. And we really only have a certain amount of opportunity because of brain development to acquire certain skills and then have them stay with us our entire life as a foundational skill. Right now, my focus working with young players is disc skills, game IQ, player IQ, and perhaps just as important, understanding confidence and the mental aspect of sports. So sports psychology and those aspects. I just want to be able to teach people that these things matter, whether they're interested or not at this age, they should be curious about them. By using these approaches to coaching at this point, stylistically, I don't have to be an over the top, intense coach who is breaking players down. I feel like there's a time and a place to get extreme and get aggressive as a coach, but those times and opportunities should come later in life. Earlier in life, I think players should experience as many voices as possible, as many mentors as possible. When you find the voices and the mentors that really resonate with you, stick with them. Stay as close to you can for as many years as you can, because as a youth athlete, you're only going to get a few years with those types of coaches until you move on. My style as a coach right now is share the gifts that I received from all the greatest players in my generation and help impress upon this younger generation of teenagers how important a full set of disc skills are. I'd imagine every player should be a handler, a cutter, a hybrid, and everything in between, offensively and defensively, through the first 5 or 10 years of their career. And then as you get to the old club playing or playing with colleges or adults, I have a very different style of coaching that's, very intense, very demanding, and is built upon what I experienced as a player, which is if you go out there and put the work in, if you work harder than any other athlete and team in the world, you get to show up to games and don't have to experience being nervous. You don't have to experience questioning things. You just know it's a process and you've already put all the work in. And game day is just a celebration of all the work you've done. And so for me as a player, I was someone who didn't get nervous. I was someone who didn't feel any different between a big game, a little game, a rec game, a national championship game, because I had coaches that helped me understand how important it was to put in the work. And I did. When I showed up on game day, that was my celebration of being one of the best players in the world. And again, that's the coaching style. And that's the gift that I'd like to give to the players that I get to touch and coach. Some of my favorite ultimate memories really span the, I'll say, highlights and lowlights. Looking back on it now, of course, I have this perspective. If someone had asked me a question like this 15 or 20 years ago, of course, the highlights would have been the moments of achieving our goals we dreamed of, the goals that we set seemed unattainable, but eventually we got to. So in the early part of my career, obviously, the greatest experience and the most incredible moments I shared were the moments where we finally won together, especially after getting to something as big as the national championship game one year and losing, a second year and losing, getting back a third year in a row, and finally having the opportunity for us to break through. That moment as an athlete shared with those players that you went to battle is irreplaceable. There's no amount of money in the world that could buy that for you. There's really no way that you could guarantee to have an experience like that unless you're willing to go take the risks of failure. That also means being able to set a goal so high that you understand it might not be obtainable. And setting huge goals means you're taking a big risk. There's a lot of failure in imagining you want to be the best of anything in the world. In the sport of ultimate, 400 teams play. We wanted to be the best. 399 teams have their dreams crushed. We were the team that also believed we were that. We deserved to be there, but weren't getting there. To have that experience is truly to understand that the journey is far more important than the destination. When I look back, I don't think about just the moment we finally won our first national championship. I think about the 5 years that led up to it. I think about the fact that I was part of one of the most successful college teams in the world, the UC Santa Barbara Black Tide. I was part of the second three-peat that our college accomplished. Now, I won 2 of those first 3 championships and then graduated and got to watch my teammates win a third. But you can imagine at that point, we thought we were some of the best players and the best team in the world. We thought we would just go move right over to Club Ultimate. Our success would follow us and we would just let the good times roll. We had a very harsh awakening. Our first year in Club Ultimate, we were absolutely crushed by all these better teams. and found ourselves really needing to understand what's the difference between being great at one level, college, and being great at another level, the highest level, which was club. I share that because it's the journey all the way back to the beginning of college, where those 5 years of playing Ultimate had a lot of highs and lows, ended with some championships, but ultimately gave me the perspective of when we got back to that national championship game in club, that it's really more about the work you put in. It's not about just deserving it. Finally winning those games were enormous, and equally as great Ultimate players, the lucky ones will get to experience after winning a club national championship. The final achievement we all reach for is a world championship. There's two types of world championships in Ultimate. There's club championships, and then there's also world championships. Club championships means everyone brings their best club teams from their countries. The team national world championships are where we basically bring our best 20 players from every country. The United States back then would just allow their top current national champion to represent their teams at these world championships. So my biggest dream at that point was to win a world championship in representation of the USA. Our first opportunity came in the year 2002. The world championship was held in Hawaii, and we actually faced off against that team, Boston Death or Glory, who happened to be up on us 8-4 in the world championship game. And somehow we came back and won ourselves our first gold medal. Those moments were probably my pinnacle moments of happiness and celebration with my teammates. But truly, the journey along the way was what I would say today was the real victory and the real goal, the real blessing. Following our world championship win, the most difficult thing for our team was, where do we go from here? How do we maintain our focus now that we've accomplished every goal we've ever set out to have and achieve? At that point, I'd won 2 college championships, 2 club championships, and already had a bronze medal at a world championship and now added a gold. And the question was, do we all stick together and keep playing? We had been playing together for almost 10, 15 years. A lot of us had not gotten very serious jobs yet because we still were trying to balance work with play. It felt like the next important step for us was finding out what else was available in life outside of Ultimate. We had spent 15 years dedicating our lives to this sport. I think the challenge was understanding that we were growing up, getting older, some of us getting closer to things like relationships and marriages or serious jobs. And the biggest challenge was figuring out how to get into real life and still be able to play Ultimate together and potentially keep winning if possible. In the year 2000, right as the millennium change occurred, 5 of us left Santa Barbara and moved to the Bay Area. In Ultimate, you're allowed to have 5 players play with your team that are outside of your specific region. At the time, the Bay Area was in a different region than Southern California. And so in the year 2000, 5 of us moved to the Bay Area, and we were still so committed to the team that we would jump in a car together Friday evening, drive to Santa Barbara, play Ultimate all weekend, Sunday night, get back in the car, drive back home. And we did this about 7 or 8 months a year from beginning till the end of our season. And the first year we did that was the year 2000, which was the year we won our first ever championship. We did it again the next year and won again and kept doing it until around the year 2004, where a few of us had to really focus on our jobs and our families and our relationships. So at that point, the challenge remained, how do we stick together? Can we stick together? Finally, in 2004, after about a 12 or 13 year run together, we all slowly started to go our separate ways to go tackle that other thing in life called life. The legacy I'd like to leave in the Ultimate community as a coach is different for the different groups that I've coached. I think about all the coaches in my life that I revere and respect and love. And I go out of my way every opportunity I have to make sure they know how impactful they were, make sure they understand how valuable they were. And I can see as a player or as a young person mentored or coached by one of those people, how impactful it is for them and how much it really stays with them in their life. I find so many times when I share this with my past coaches or mentors, they're mostly surprised. I didn't know you felt that way. I had no idea you thought this. As a coach, I'm beginning to get some of that feedback myself at this point in my life. There really is nothing more rewarding than knowing I supported someone in a positive way to go achieve their dreams. And for whatever reason, I was able to use my experiences to help unlock their potential, to just support another athlete, another human to go chase after their dreams and get a chance at achieving them. I know is absolutely life changing. The confidence and the belief in myself that I receive from playing Ultimate is untouchable. I am fearless in my life. I am fearless because I don't mind making mistakes. I don't mind failing. I am fearless because I can try anything, and whether I succeed or fail, I'm still going to walk away happy and fulfilled. And so as a coach, the things that I'm appreciating the most and hoping for in these players is just to give those players that simple same opportunity. Chase after your dream. If you're willing to put in the work, you're going to have an outcome that will be life-changing. I think so much of that all comes down to just a simple belief in yourself. We humans are pretty fickle, and our confidence goes up and down pretty quickly and easily. We can lose faith in ourselves and regain faith in ourselves so quickly. Life gets complicated as you get old. And so the question is, what do we have to lean on? What experiences can we fall back on so we can handle those tougher moments? And for me, as a coach, I want to give some of those skills to my players. I'm trying to help them become a great Ultimate player, but much more importantly, I want them to become a great human. And I want them to become a resilient human who can also then pass those gifts on to the people that they might have the opportunity to mentor me with. I feel like so many of the gifts and experiences I had in Ultimate were because of the support that I had. I am very clear that I ended up in this place not because of just myself. Obviously, it starts with foundational support at home. I was fortunate to have two parents who just showed up every opportunity they could and really got behind me and at the right times pushed me and supported me and gave me the space. Those are such important aspects of all sports and accomplishments in life. The greatest athletes in our lives and our worlds don't ever do things by themselves. There's always going to be a small, medium, or even a large group around them that's quietly lifting them up, that is quietly holding down the foundational part of their life or the aspect of what they're trying to achieve. So for me, I had that gift. I had the gift of the Ultimate parents who showed up to all my events and became team moms and team dads, and lots of other parents did the same thing. As I get to this point in my career, I recognize how it's really my time to just pay it forward. So by showing up as a coach and trying to help organizations with the experience I've had, truly all comes back to just how can I be of service to the sport I love the most, community I love the most, families that I really love and cherish and look up to. So Ultimate has become a way to be really intertwined with my community. I'm also very fortunate that I had a family that fell so deeply in love with the sport that my father not only at one point joined the USA Ultimate Board of Directors. Back then it was the UPA, and he was our first ever non-player board member who again just showed up to be of service to this thing that he saw and loved. I learned by watching him and seeing what he was doing, just giving of himself, that was something I also wanted to do as I got older. I've had these role models and mentors. I've had incredible female coaches and mentors in my life that have given me both sides, sport and competition, the equal opportunities of fierceness and sensitivity, both from a male perspective and a female perspective, and how all those come together. Tried to remain humble. It's not easy. I did not do a very good job of it in the early part of my career. And that's why I'm trying so hard to correct things and do things right and be the right model in the second half of my career. So at this point, I love Ultimate. I still am playing. I'm entering, I think, my 35th year of playing Ultimate. Took about one season off when I tore my Achilles. And after that, I just got right back up to chase after this flying plastic and to be with the people I love. Here find myself 35 years later, still playing the sport with many of the people I played with and against 35 years ago. I've had the opportunity to play with my son in a very competitive ultimate game. And I'm hoping I get to play for another 5 or 10 years, coach for another 10 or 20, and then watch the next generation really step up and take over, take the baton from me and the previous generation and show us how to lead, mentor, and coach our future of our sport, because our future is very bright and I'm going to be one of the biggest fans watching it unfold. I'm very proud to say that my father, as what we say in our family, is his love song was watching and supporting ultimate players. And his gift to all of us, his love song to all of us, was recognizing that no one in the history of our sport had taken any time to actually record the history of our sport. He decided, after he asked 100 questions and wasn't getting the right answers about what was happening to the founders of our sport, who created this sport, when and why, when did the rules change, how did these important shifts occur? Nobody had answers. He had a passion for genealogy, and he took that passion and turned it a little bit into history. He decided he would gather a group of dedicated ultimate players from around the country, and also raise money from ultimate players around the country, to set out on a project to make sure that we recorded the history of our sport from our founders before they had passed away. So what started as a little side project chronicling the history of the black tide, then chronicling the history of the condors, the lady condors and the men condors, the black tide, the burning skirts, that he wanted to actually create a historical archive of our entire sport. So he raised a bunch of money, hired a bunch of interviewers and writers, set them out all across the country to go find and record the history of our sport. From all of that work, he published the first ever history book on our sport. It's called Ultimate, the First 4 Decades. About 10 years after that, he took a second passion project and created a follow-up volume 2 that had the next decade. This was just his gift to the sport. This was his gift to the men and women he watched pouring their heart and soul out on the field, who really didn't have an archive of everything they had done. There was this concept of Hall of Fame and Hall of Famers, but it was just a very diluted concept of the history of our sport. The history was much deeper and fell much further outside a few players who won a bunch of games and had a bunch of great opportunities. After all of his dedication, all of his work, and his gifts back to our sport, he was given the honor of a lifetime a few years ago and was inducted into the Ultimate Frisbee Hall of Fame as our first ever contributor historian. I'm incredibly proud of my father, and still to this day know that I am the man I am so much because of him, and the man I'm still trying to become so much because everything he did, everything I did, none of that would have been possible without my brother and my mom. The entire family gave all of themselves in all of these different ways, and we showed up together to really come together and become an ultimate family. Something I'm extremely proud of and will forever. The books you see in front of us are the result of my father and a huge group of incredibly dedicated ultimate players who made this come to life. We had writers, photographers, interviewers. I mean, there were so many incredible people, from Tony Leonardo to Jason Wedekind and so on and so on. From these came an actual history of where we all came from, so we can all have a better understanding of where we're going and be able to look back on the history if we need to. This was the first book created, Ultimate, the first 5 decades from 1968 to 2004. Just an incredible archive of everything that happened in our sport from start to finish. And then after about 10 years, we recognized how our sport really was continuing to advance. No one else had taken the helm and really continuing the history of our sport and capturing it. So my dad decided to do one last gift, one last labor of love. And it was, let's get the next decade archived into this book. Let's make sure our sport has a better understanding of equity of male and female players. Let's make sure that everyone can see how our sport is changing because these first 5 decades were really a sport that just evolved within the vision of founders. What happened after that is how our sport has changed, and the inclusions of things like Ultimate and Pro Ultimate and World Games Ultimate and so many other opportunities and so many other versions. Fortunately, we only published 4,000 of these books each when they were made, and they were all sold pretty quickly. They're all left in the world. And so there's only about 30 or 40 of these left in my closet. And so I very carefully share them with the right people over time that will make sure that our history is carried forward in the future. Our sport is so beautiful to watch, and it's really hard to capture. Ultimate is not easy to film or photograph. So for our photographers and our videographers that capture these amazing moments really means they're special what they do. Outside of my Ultimate career, what I focused on in the last 10 or 20 years is finding opportunities and ways to be of service to the people I love. By doing things like that, I've found my way onto volunteering for different nonprofits. I just find life is difficult, and sometimes in life you achieve things because of working really hard and doing the things that our society wants us to do: get a good job, get a great partner, start a beautiful family, give back to your community. But I've really found that giving of my time is probably more rewarding than even achieving goals that I created singularly. I find there's something really huge in life that you gain more from teams and teamwork than by individual. Say the one thing that maybe that I've taken with me in my life that is a little outside of Ultimate, but of course connected to Ultimate, is really just the power of a team. I built my own company, and I basically built it in the model of an Ultimate team. I've run a few nonprofits. I built the nonprofit organizations and tried to help them function like teams, Ultimate teams in particular. And so I just keep finding that I take the success that I happen to find from sports, and I can just keep applying it to all these different aspects of life, like my job, volunteering. I definitely try to bring it into the picture of being a better husband, father, partner, by understanding that you have to give and take in life. Sometimes you need to be a leader. Sometimes you need to be a follower. All the people that talk about how important sports are in their life, this is why. I never really understood it. I was always like, oh, everyone says sports are so important and so great in life because those people like to play and they're having more fun than everyone else. And it's fun to compete and win. But I really understood that competing and winning is all fun and games, but having a community around you that loves and supports you, that you give to and they give back to, is truly the greatest gift of life. And everything I've done just seems to have come from the concept of being an athlete on a team, where a team can accomplish exponentially more than an individual ever can. I'm out there in my life from here on out looking for team opportunities, things to accomplish with groups of people that there's no way I could ever accomplish on my own. I've had interviews out there where it's just all about, so how did you guys win? What was your path to greatness? And like, those stories get old fast. They really do. The real depth of experience lies within what I said. Like, life is about the journey. You can't be attached to the destination. You can want it. You can want it bad, but yeah, so many more gifts to be received. There are these things called the Maccabea. These were like the Jewish Junior Olympics. And of course they had Ultimate back then, but as a kid, I was just playing soccer and track, and I found out they had these Jewish Junior Olympics, and there was track and field out there, and I was a young discus thrower and shot putter, and I could also sprint and run faster than everybody. And so I was like, oh yeah, let me just go out there and see where I stack up against the other best Jewish athletes in the United States. And it turned out I stacked up pretty well. I came home with a bunch of bronze and silver medals and a few golds, competing with every other athlete in the United States. Those are those little moments of confidence where you realize, okay, I'm pretty good at this, and I keep working hard, great things are going to happen. On so many of these, you don't look at to really appreciate like how many experiences you had with your teammates. And I really appreciate as much as we talked about before, like the silvers and bronzes ultimately have more meaning than the golds.